Legend has it, if you go deep into the Great Dismal Swamp at night, you'll see the image of a woman paddling a white canoe on a lake with a lamp, looking for her lover. It's one of the many myths and stories about the swamp that date back centuries.
It was a forbidden place where you just didn't go, because you may not come out.
The once forbidden swamp sits in Chesapeake, Suffolk, and North Carolina. Chris Lowy works at the swamp.
The Great Dismal Swamp has a very intriguing and what I would call a tremendous history.
Its history dates back centuries, including from an explorer named William Byrd. He helped give the swamp its name.
And he said it's the most dismal, god-awful place you want to be.
It's perhaps creepiest at night, a time when it'd be easy to get lost. And today the swamp closes before nightfall.
It's pitch black dark. I mean, it is scary dark.
An English writer once described the swamp as a place in which the imagination plays tricks on the victim. Is this a haunted place, or are our minds playing tricks on us? Another story tells of the historical figure William Drummond. He went hunting at the swamp along with a few others, but Drummond was the only one to make it out. He escaped after days of wandering alone, but over the years, many others didn't.
Mainly people get lost. That would be my guess, is people will get lost and they'd perish.
It was that type of isolation that made it a destination for slaves trying to escape the South and get to freedom before the Civil War.
It was a forbidden place. You didn't go in the swamp. That's why the freedom seekers could actually reside here, because you couldn't get people to come into the swamp to search for them.
Parts of the swamp are so thick and so dense that historically it's been a place that people try to avoid. But today, workers at the swamp try to embrace its storied history.
So all the stories of the history where it's a dismal place that no one would ever want to go in it's not like that today. It is not a dismal place.
Not dismal, but mysterious. It's so large you might see something different each time you visit. And if you're not careful, you might encounter one of the figures that gives the swamp its legend. In Suffolk, Brendan Ponton, News 3.
Get them off the streets. Get them out of our neighborhoods, because we don't want them here.
We meet Andrew Pate and a couple of neighbors in front of Pate's home on South Oxford Street.
We get prostitutes dropped off right in front of our house. Picked up, dropped off, all hours of the night. And my children see this.
They're calling on police to ramp up patrols through the area.
I don't feel like there's much being done to prevent or deter.
Rodrigo Aganiga has lived here for more than a decade, but says this is the worst it's ever been.
Guys parked right in front of my house, also in the church parking lot, on the side, and picked up prostitutes.
RTV6 found roughly 1 in every 3 prostitution arrests made in 2017 happened inside this 2-square-mile area between 10th, Washington, Rural, and Emerson.
This is a hotbed for prostitution over here.
We asked police if they've considered upping patrols or if something else can be done.
Since I have seen this happening and reported it, I've seen less police presence from that request.
It is the future of naval aviation. The F-35C Lightning II, the Navy's version of the Joint Strike Fighter. And right now, it's being tested in the Atlantic Ocean on the Norfolk-based aircraft carrier Dwight D. Eisenhower.
The opportunity is I can't even describe it. It's a high point in my career to be able to come out and do that initial testing for an airplane that's going to stay around in the fleet for a long time.
News Channel 3 was aboard the Eisenhower Friday for the final day of flight operations for this segment of the testing. We watched as the F-35C was catapulted off the deck, flew over the ocean, and landed back on the carrier. For the test pilots establishing what will be the norms for this jet once it reaches the fleet, the job is both thrilling and also a great sense of duty.
Take that lightly. I mean, to think that like any things that we kind of complain about or things that we try to work on improving it's going to affect guys for a long time. So I try to think of it as like when I first got out to the fleet in a Hornet, and be like, hey, these are the things I liked or didn't like, and you just kind of get used to them. It's like those impressions are going to come from what I do on the airplane.
If all goes well with testing the F-35C, the Navy hopes to have it operational within the fleet within the next 2 years. Aboard the USS Eisenhower in the Atlantic Ocean, Todd Carrillo, WGNT News.
I'm angry for this family and what they're enduring, and that nobody in this state or city has ever felt like they're responsible to come out here and help them.
Counselor Jared Evans first learned about the warden's problems after our last story aired in early September.
I don't know how people can feel like, regular folks can be responsible for large capital projects that are more expensive than their homes.
DPW has repeatedly told me it's a private property matter that's the responsibility of the wardens to pay for. They got estimates close to $100,000 for a home that's already paid off.
And it's not even our problem in the first place. It's the city, the state's problem. It's their ditch.
Mr. Warden has been fighting. He's reinforced the creek bed on his property as best he can.
Their ditch caused this damage to my property, and they're trying to tell me I gotta pay $100,000 to fix it.
We previously reported on blockages in the creek Mr. Warden believes make flooding worse. DPW notified property owners in that area, and some of the blockages have been cleared, but Mr. Warden says there are more.
It's basically a bathtub, and we can't get the water out of it. It's gonna flood everybody.
Counselor Evans will work to address that issue first.
I'm going to work with the local community and do what we can with volunteers to come out here and try to remove some of this blockage.
But says something may need to be done in the state legislature to make sure that doesn't happen to someone else.
In no way, shape, or form should anybody who bought their home 40 years ago, 50 years ago, which is the case of him, think that he's somehow responsible now because the creek, after hundreds of development deals that have taken place, has been rising and flowing down faster, that he's somehow responsible for all that. That's just wrong.
Mr. Warden is hoping something can be done soon because he knows what the consequences will be if it isn't.
Needs to pray that we don't have any more rain because they're going to be underwater if something's not taken care of.
Chloe Garcia loves shopping, especially for things pink and lavender. And if it has glitter, that's even better. Her mom describes her as an even-tempered little girl who rarely cried.
Very mellow child, would play by herself, well-rounded, happy little girl.
But last October, everything changed. Chloe and her family were doing something they did every year, lighting the Halloween pumpkin. It exploded, burning Chloe's face, neck, and arm. She spent weeks in the ICU.
The hospital was pretty tough. Just seeing how her skin looked, the scrapings they did. She had 12 surgeries.
That's 12 times she saw her baby undergoing anesthesia. And as hard as that was, it's just the start of a new reality for Chloe and her family.
It has changed her dramatically. Basically, what she does now is she cries all the time. Whether it's I've got to put her ointments on her face a couple of times a day, I'm constantly having to rub and massage her scars, to just not wanting to be touched, period.
Doctors told Mom Melanie that the best hope Chloe had to heal her scars would be to get a special plastic mask at the Shriners Hospital in Cincinnati, one of only a few places that makes them. We wanted to see how this special mask worked and how it could help Chloe recover. So we traveled with the family to Cincinnati, the only station invited to go along. Turns out, an extra hand proved useful as Chloe rarely left Melanie's arms.
Are you excited to see it? Yeah?
Her mom tells me Chloe's been very anxious about the mask and often cries when they talk about it. Tough medicine for a little girl who doesn't want her tender face touched.
How important is this?
Oh, it's probably the only treatment to smooth out the face scar.
And to smooth out the raised scars calls for a special skill set. A medical sculptor uses putty to take an impression of the patient's face. When it hardens, they scrape off the scars and then lay a piece of plastic over the mold of the child's face so it will fit tightly.
This is really hard.
And uncomfortable. So trying to get a 5-year-old to wear it 22 hours a day might be challenging, but necessary, because without it,
the scars can distort her whole facial. It can pull the eyes down, it can pull her lips down. The scars are pulling against her facial features. So the only treatment is really to put the pressure on and keep that face in good alignment.
And that's what Melanie is afraid of.
You know, my hope is that she just is a normal little girl and one day this is just a bad nightmare gone away.
As we're waiting to get her mask, Chloe's getting anxious and agitated.
Here's Miss Michelle. Okay.
Then a nurse brings her something very special.
It's an American Girl doll.
An American doll dressed in burn garments and a mask that looks very similar to the one Chloe's getting. But the closer we get to the fitting, Chloe gets more upset, and the doctors ask us to leave the room. After about 30 minutes, the tiny patient is back from the exam room.
Let's go back to the airport so we can go home.
Wearing her special mask.
It was definitely tough.
Chloe surprised everyone and wanted to keep the mask on.
When they took it off to readjust it, she didn't want him to take it off. She wanted to wear it. So she knows she's superhero Chloe. That's what we're going to call her. And she seems pretty happy.
And most superheroes do have a sidekick. And her name is Gracie.
So proud of you, Chloe. Good job. You are a superhero.
The Colonial Parkway is one of the most scenic roads you'll take in Virginia, connecting Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. But this winding road holds secrets. Secrets that have now been kept for 30 years. It was fall 1986. Kathy Thomas and her girlfriend, Becky Dowski, wound up dead just off the parkway. Kathy's brother Bill recently visited the crime scene for the first time.
I think it's a significant anniversary. I know we're one of the longest unsolved multiple homicides in the United States.
From 1986 to 1989, 3 couples were killed. A 4th is still missing, but presumed dead. They were stabbed or shot around the Williamsburg area. The killings have been dubbed the Colonial Parkway Murders. Kathy Thomas and Becky Dowski were the first victims. The two were out one October night in Kathy's car.
Unfortunately, something transpired. They were ultimately murdered. They were strangled with rope. Their throats were cut from beyond ear to ear.
Thomas says authorities aren't sure where the murders happened, but Kathy and Becky's bodies were found in their car down this embankment behind me, closer to the York River.
It was very hard to understand the brutality of it and not just why it happened, but how it happened.
The Thomas family watched as murder after murder after murder happened.
Are all 4 of these incidents related? That's been the subject of debate for decades. There are some similarities in the cases. All 4 involved couples.
The point has been made to me, Bill, what are the chances of 4 double homicides happening, in and around Williamsburg, Virginia over this 3-year period? And I have to agree. I think that's pretty unusual.
Thomas says he has hope forensic testing will produce new leads in the cases, and as we approach the 30th anniversary of his sister's killing, hopes he'll live to see the day someone is caught.
I think we're getting closer. I think we may have a day where we actually have a conversation to talk about how, an arrest has been made or suspects have been identified, or perhaps we could say someday that the Colonial Parkway murders have been solved.
But until then, the families wait, and the killer or killers continue to get away with it. Along the Colonial Parkway, Brendan Ponton, News 3.